The morning was bright and crisp, and the airport was buzzing with its usual mix of excitement and stress. Travelers were rushing with their luggage. Announcements echoed through the halls, and the scent of fresh coffee lingered in the air. Among the crowd, a young girl walked hand in hand with her mother, her small suitcase rolling beside her. She was wearing a bright pink hoodie and had her hair tied neatly into two buns. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, and she couldn't stop glancing around, taking in everything: the giant departure boards, the people hurrying past, the colorful shops, and the scent of baked goods from a nearby cafe. She had never been on a plane before, especially not in first class, and the idea of flying high above the clouds made her heart race with joy. Her mother smiled as she adjusted the straps of her own bag. The two of them had planned this trip for weeks, marking the days on a calendar at home, discussing what they would do and imagining all the fun they would have. Today was finally the day, and although the mother tried to remain calm and collected, she could feel the excitement radiating from her daughter. She was proud of her daughter's curiosity, intelligence, and the polite way she carried herself, even in this busy, bustling environment. They approached the check-in counter, where a flight attendant was typing quickly on a computer, her expression professional but slightly weary. The girl could feel her stomach flutter as she watched the interaction. She handed over the documents, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear but from sheer anticipation. The flight attendant glanced at the boarding pass, then looked up at the girl and her mother. "Good morning," the mother said warmly. "We're here for the first-class flight to New York. Everything should be in order." The attendant nodded, typing something quickly on her keyboard. She paused, looking at the boarding pass again. "I'm sorry," she said, her tone polite but firm. "There seems to be an issue with the seat assignment. Can I see some identification?" The girl handed over her ID, trying not to let her disappointment show. She had dreamed of this moment, imagining herself sitting comfortably in the wide, plush seats watching the clouds from the window, and maybe even trying some fancy food on the flight. But now, hearing the word issue made her heart sink a little. Her mother, sensing the confusion, leaned closer. "Everything is in order," she said calmly. "The boarding passes are correct, and the seats are assigned as first class. Can you check again, please?" The attendant nodded, typing more quickly, her fingers tapping against the keyboard in a rapid rhythm. She glanced at them once more, then back at the screen. "I'm really sorry," she said, her voice polite but not apologetic. "There is a policy that prevents this seat from being used at this time. I'm afraid she will need to be in the economy section." The girl's eyes widened. She blinked, trying to understand. "But my ticket says first class," she said softly. Her voice trembled a little, not out of fear but from the unfairness of the situation. She had saved up and planned this trip, and now she was being told she could not sit where she was supposed to. Other travelers around them were beginning to notice, some looking curiously, others politely turning away, not wanting to get involved. The mother's face remained calm, but inside she felt a flicker of anger and disbelief. She had always taught her daughter to remain polite and patient, even in difficult situations. She took a deep breath, trying to remain composed. "I'm sure there's been a mistake," she said gently. "Can you please recheck the boarding passes? Everything is valid and she is entitled to this seat." The attendant shook her head slightly, avoiding direct eye contact. "I'm following policy," she said, her tone unwavering. "The seat cannot be assigned to her." The girl's excitement began to fade, replaced by confusion and a sense of injustice. She tugged gently at her mother's hand. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why can't I sit there?" The mother knelt down slightly to meet her daughter's gaze. "Sometimes people make mistakes or they don't see the full situation," she explained softly. "It's not your fault. Let's try to stay calm and find a solution together." The girl nodded, though her heart still ached. She had imagined herself sitting in first class, maybe even watching movies, sipping juice in a fancy glass, and looking out at the world from above the clouds. Now that dream felt like it was slipping away before it had even begun. Around them, other passengers were starting to murmur quietly. Some whispered to their companions, sharing the oddness of the situation. The girl could feel the curious eyes on her, and although she tried to ignore it, a tiny spark of embarrassment flickered in her chest. She was used to being confident and polite, but this felt different. She felt singled out, treated unfairly without understanding why. The mother spoke to the attendant again, her voice steady and kind but firm. "I really think there must be a mistake. Can you call your supervisor or double-check with the airline system? Everything is in order." and we are simply asking for what is rightfully assigned to us." The attendant hesitated, then nodded. She picked up the phone and made a quick call. The girl watched her hands, the tension in her small body noticeable. She hugged her backpack close, wishing that somehow this situation could be resolved quickly. She glanced at her mother, who gave her an encouraging smile. "It will be okay," her mother whispered. Sometimes people just need to be reminded to do the right thing. As the attendant spoke into the phone, the girl tried to calm herself. She imagined the clouds outside the plane's window, soft and white, stretching as far as the eye could see. She pictured herself finally sitting in the comfortable seat, maybe even laughing with her mother, feeling the thrill of flying for the first time. Holding on to that image helped her feel a little less anxious, though the uncertainty still lingered. The call ended and the attendant hung up the phone, glancing back at them with a mixture of hesitation and discomfort. "I'm sorry," she said again, avoiding eye contact. "The policy stands. She cannot sit in first class." The girl's heart sank. She looked down, trying to hide the sting of disappointment. Her mother's jaw tightened, but she continued to maintain a calm and polite demeanor. She whispered to her daughter, "We'll figure this out. Don't let anyone take away your joy. You are strong, and this is just a small bump on the way." Around them, the airport's noise continued, people moving with their lives, unaware of the small drama unfolding at the check-in counter. The girl could feel the tension in the air, the mix of embarrassment, confusion, and frustration. She tried to focus on her breathing, reminding herself of the fun that awaited her, the excitement of travel and the adventure ahead. As they moved away from the counter, the mother held her daughter close. "Let's wait by the gate for now," she suggested. "Sometimes patience is the best solution. We will make sure this is resolved before boarding." The girl nodded, still feeling a mix of disappointment and hope. She clutched her backpack tightly and followed her mother through the bustling terminal, keeping her head high despite the unfairness of what had just happened. Inside, she vowed quietly to herself that she would not let this moment define her. She would remain polite, confident, and hopeful, and she would enjoy the flight no matter what. The girl and her mother waited near the gate, the hum of the busy airport surrounding them. Travelers rushed past, some hurrying to catch their flights, others leisurely making their way to the shops and cafes. The girl held her mother's hand tightly, trying to stay calm while her mind replayed the frustrating encounter at the check-in counter. She couldn't understand why the seat she had dreamed of for weeks was suddenly out of reach. Her mother noticed the anxiety in her daughter's eyes and knelt down beside her. "I know it feels unfair," she said softly. "Sometimes people don't see things clearly. But that doesn't mean you have to give up. We will find a way to make it right." The girl nodded slowly. She wanted to trust her mother's words, but a quiet anger simmered inside her. She had imagined herself floating above the clouds, feeling the excitement of the plane taking off, and now she was facing something she didn't deserve. The airport seemed louder now, the voices of travelers sharper in her ears. She kept glancing at the gate, hoping for some sign that the situation would be resolved before boarding. When it was finally time to board, the mother spoke with the gate attendant, explaining the situation calmly and politely. The attendant listened, nodding, but made no promises. The girl followed closely behind her mother, carrying her backpack, feeling nervous. She noticed other passengers glancing at her and whispering, though she tried to ignore them. Each step toward the plane felt heavier than the last. As they stepped onto the aircraft, the girl's heart pounded in her chest. The cabin crew greeted them, smiling politely, but she could feel the subtle tension in the air. When they reached the first-class section, the flight attendant from earlier was there, crossing her arms and blocking the path. "Excuse me," the girl said softly. "This is my seat." She handed over her boarding pass, trying to sound confident despite the knot of frustration in her stomach. The attendant glanced at the pass and frowned. "I'm sorry," she said, repeating the same words from the check-in counter. "You cannot sit here. Please move to economy." The girl's mother stepped forward. "There must be some mistake," she said calmly. "Everything is in order. This is her seat." The attendant shook her head. "I'm following protocol. First-class seating is limited, and this seat cannot be used at this time." The girl felt a rush of embarrassment. Other passengers were watching the interaction, and she could sense their curiosity. She didn't like being in the spotlight for something she hadn't done. She tried to keep her voice steady. "But I have my boarding pass," she said. "I am supposed to sit here." The mother tried to reason with the attendant again, her voice patient but firm. "Please, there must be a way to verify this. I promise everything is correct. Can you check with your supervisor or the airline system? The attendant hesitated, looking uncomfortable. She gestured toward the back of the plane. I'm sorry. You will need to sit in economy. That is the policy. The girl's hands clenched into fists hidden in the folds of her hoodie. Her excitement was slipping away, replaced by a sense of helplessness. She looked around, trying to find an adult she could appeal to, but everyone seemed busy with their own boarding. The flight attendants moved with precision, ignoring the small drama unfolding in the first-class cabin. She felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had been taught to handle unfair situations with grace even if her heart was hurt. Still, the sting of injustice was sharp. She tugged at her mother's sleeve. Why won't they listen? She whispered. Her mother crouched down and held her close. Some people make mistakes or misjudge situations, she said softly. It doesn't mean you're wrong. We just have to stay calm and keep trying. The girl took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. She could feel the tension in the cabin, the quiet murmurs of passengers who had noticed the exchange. Some were watching with curiosity, others with sympathy, but no one intervened. She wished she could explain herself to everyone, tell them she had done nothing wrong and that she had earned her seat. But words felt insufficient. A senior flight attendant approached, noticing the commotion. Is there an issue here? She asked politely. The mother explained the situation, providing the boarding passes and recounting the earlier encounter with the first attendant. The senior attendant listened carefully, nodding as she examined the documents. I understand, the senior attendant said, her tone neutral but serious. I will need to verify this with the system. Please wait here for a moment. She walked toward a small office at the front of the plane, leaving the girl and her mother standing in the aisle. The girl felt a mix of hope and anxiety. She wanted to believe that someone would finally recognize the mistake, that she would get the seat she had dreamed about. At the same time, she worried that nothing would change and that she would be forced to sit in economy. Her excitement dimmed. While they waited, the girl looked around the first-class cabin. The seats were wide and plush, the armrests soft, the screens ready for entertainment, and the view from the windows stunning. She imagined herself sitting there, enjoying the luxury she had been promised, and the contrast between her dream and her current reality made her chest ache. Passengers around them whispered quietly, some glancing at the documents, others casting curious looks. The girl felt self-conscious but tried to stay composed. She adjusted her backpack, held her mother's hand, and focused on her breathing, repeating the advice her mother had given her. Stay calm, stay polite, and do not let the unfairness take away your joy. After what felt like an eternity, the senior attendant returned. She had a different expression this time, one of realization and concern. I see there has been a mistake, she said quietly. We will need to resolve this immediately. The girl's heart leapt. She looked up at her mother, who smiled encouragingly. Thank you, her mother said softly, relief evident in her voice. The attendant turned to the first flight attendant who had blocked them. Please make sure the correct seat is assigned and apologize to the passenger, she instructed firmly. The young girl felt a mix of relief and lingering tension. The situation was not fully resolved yet, but it seemed they were finally being recognized. The first attendant looked uncomfortable, muttering an apology, and moved to guide the girl to her rightful seat. The girl's excitement slowly returned, though she could still feel the sting of the earlier humiliation. She climbed into the plush first-class seat, feeling the soft leather beneath her and the wide space around her. It was everything she had imagined, and finally she could breathe again. As the plane prepared for takeoff, the girl gazed out the window, feeling the anticipation return. The clouds outside promised adventure and new experiences. She held her mother's hand tightly, whispering, I can't believe it, we made it. Her mother squeezed her hand gently. Sometimes you have to be patient, she said softly. And sometimes you have to stand firm. You did both, and now you can enjoy this moment. The girl leaned back in her seat, finally feeling the comfort and excitement of first class. The earlier tension and disappointment still lingered in the back of her mind, but she was learning a valuable lesson about resilience, patience, and the importance of staying calm even in unfair situations. The adventure had just begun, and she was ready to enjoy every moment of it, holding on to the hope that the rest of the journey would be as special as she had imagined. As the plane settled into the taxiway, the young girl tried to focus on the view outside the window. The tarmac stretched endlessly, dotted with airplanes of all sizes, and she imagined the adventure that awaited once they were airborne. Even though she was finally in her first-class seat, the memory of the earlier confrontation with the flight attendant lingered, making her feel uneasy. She was proud of herself for remaining calm and polite, but the unfairness of the situation still left a bitter taste. Meanwhile, back at the airline's headquarters, the father was in a meeting when his assistant quietly stepped in. She looked slightly anxious, holding a phone in her hand. "Sir, there's a situation on Flight 402, she said softly. "It involves your daughter. She was denied first-class seating by one of the flight attendants. The situation is being handled, but it seems she's uncomfortable and waiting to board." The father's eyes widened in surprise. He was rarely caught off guard, but hearing that his daughter was being treated unfairly made his chest tighten. He quickly excused himself from the meeting, signaling his assistant to stay behind. His mind raced with concern and disbelief. How could someone not recognize her rightfully assigned seat, especially knowing she was his daughter? He immediately contacted the operations manager responsible for the flight. "What is happening on Flight 402? He asked, his voice calm but with an edge of authority. The manager quickly explained that the flight attendant had blocked his daughter from sitting in first class due to a supposed policy issue. The father's eyes narrowed as he listened, feeling a surge of protective instinct. "I want this corrected immediately," he said firmly. "She is my daughter and she has every right to her seat. Make sure the situation is resolved before takeoff. If necessary, I will handle it personally." Back on the plane, the girl was trying to enjoy the luxury around her, but she couldn't shake off the feeling of being singled out earlier. She noticed the subtle tension in the cabin crew, the quiet glances between attendants, and the whispered conversations that didn't reach her ears but added to her unease. She held her mother's hand, leaning slightly toward her for comfort. The mother noticed her daughter's lingering discomfort and spoke softly. "Sometimes people don't see the whole picture," she said, "but the important thing is that we stayed calm and handled it politely. That matters more than the mistake itself." Just then, the captain's voice came over the intercom, welcoming passengers and announcing that the flight would be departing shortly. The girl gripped her mother's hand a little tighter, feeling the anticipation of takeoff. Her excitement was returning, but the earlier incident still weighed on her heart. Meanwhile, in the first-class cabin, the senior flight attendant had quietly contacted the ground team, explaining the situation. They were aware of the girl's identity and the urgency of resolving the matter. The first flight attendant, who had initially denied her seat, looked increasingly uncomfortable, aware that a serious mistake had been made. Back at the airline's headquarters, the father was now coordinating with the operations team. "Ensure she is comfortable and her seat is honored," he instructed firmly. "This is not just about policy, it's about respect and fairness. She should never feel singled out or disrespected." He decided to take a more direct approach. He would personally be in touch with the flight crew and make sure the situation was handled immediately. His assistant coordinated with the airport team to inform the cabin staff discreetly that he was monitoring the situation. There was no room for mistakes now. The young girl's dignity and comfort were paramount. Back in the cabin, the girl noticed subtle changes in the crew's behavior. The flight attendants seemed more alert, checking with each other quietly, and there was a sense of nervous energy in the air. She didn't yet know that her father had intervened, but she felt a slight shift. It was as if the atmosphere around her was changing, and the earlier tension was beginning to dissipate. The mother leaned toward her daughter and whispered, "Just stay calm. Everything will be fine. Sometimes people make mistakes, but they can be corrected. You've been patient and polite, and that matters." The girl nodded, taking a deep breath. She focused on the excitement of flying, imagining the clouds outside the window, soft and endless, and the adventure that awaited. Her small hands gripped the armrests as the plane began to taxi toward the runway. Her heart raced with anticipation, the thrill of the upcoming journey mingling with the lingering memory of earlier frustration. Suddenly, one of the cabin crew approached, holding a tablet in hand. She spoke quietly but firmly to the first flight attendant, who nodded, looking nervous. The young girl's mother noticed the exchange and felt a glimmer of hope. Something was happening, though she didn't yet know what. The girl watched the crew quietly, sensing the subtle shift in energy. The attendants were speaking in hushed tones, moving with purpose, and she could tell that something important was unfolding. her curiosity mixed with anticipation, wondering what was about to happen next. Meanwhile, the father continued to monitor the situation from headquarters. He was aware of every detail, coordinating with the operations manager, the airport staff, and the flight crew. His focus was entirely on ensuring his daughter's comfort and making sure that the crew handled the situation appropriately. He understood the importance of calm authority and precision, knowing that his intervention had to be effective without causing unnecessary disruption to other passengers. Back in the cabin, the first flight attendant hesitated for a moment, glancing at the young girl before taking a step back. The senior flight attendant spoke quietly, giving instructions, and the crew began moving with renewed urgency. The girl felt a flicker of curiosity mixed with hope, sensing that the situation was about to be addressed. The plane's engines roared softly as it taxied toward the runway. The girl leaned slightly forward, her eyes wide, her mind racing with anticipation. She imagined the clouds, the view from above, and the excitement of flying for the first time in first class. Her mother squeezed her hand gently, providing reassurance and comfort. As the plane reached the runway, the captain made the final announcements, and the engines grew louder, signaling the imminent takeoff. The young girl felt her heart pounding, a mix of excitement and lingering anxiety. She was on the verge of a journey she had dreamed about for weeks, and finally the first-class seat was her own, waiting to provide comfort and adventure. Back at headquarters, the father felt a sense of relief knowing that the situation was being handled. He trusted the crew to follow his instructions and ensure that his daughter's experience was as special and enjoyable as it should be. His focus shifted slightly to the flight itself, confident that she was in capable hands now. The girl gazed out the window as the plane lifted off the ground, the city below shrinking, the clouds rising to meet them. She felt a rush of excitement and wonder, the earlier tension fading as the thrill of flight took over. Her mother smiled beside her, sharing in the joy and relief of the moment. The journey had begun, and the young girl was ready to embrace every moment of it, knowing that her patience, politeness, and resilience had brought her to this point. The plane had reached cruising altitude, the engines humming smoothly as passengers settled into their routines. The young girl, finally seated in her first-class seat, was starting to relax. The soft leather, the spacious legroom, and the comfort of the seat were everything she had imagined and more. She looked out at the clouds drifting by, white and fluffy, feeling a thrill at the thought of floating above the world. Her mother sat beside her, smiling softly, watching her daughter's excitement return. But the earlier incident with the flight attendant still lingered in her mind. Even though she was now in the right seat, she couldn't forget the confusion and the unfair treatment she had faced. Her small hands rested on the armrests, her fingers tracing the soft leather as she tried to focus on the beauty outside the window. She wanted to enjoy this moment, yet a small part of her still felt uneasy, remembering the feeling of being denied what was rightfully hers. Meanwhile, back at headquarters, the father was in constant communication with the operations team and the senior flight attendant on board. He wanted to ensure that not only was his daughter comfortable, but that the crew understood the gravity of the situation and took the necessary steps to correct the mistake fully. On board, the senior flight attendant had gathered the crew in a quiet, discreet meeting near the galley. Her tone was firm yet calm. "There was a serious mistake made by one of our team members," she said. "This young passenger was denied her rightful seat, and it cannot happen again. We need to handle this with professionalism, respect, and courtesy. I expect everyone to follow protocol and treat all passengers equally." The first flight attendant, the one who had initially denied the girl's seat, looked uncomfortable. She avoided eye contact, her hands fidgeting slightly. She had realized the severity of her actions and the embarrassment she could face if the matter escalated. The senior attendant continued, ensuring that the crew understood the importance of the situation. "Mistakes happen, but we correct them immediately. Our passengers' trust and comfort are our responsibility." The first attendant nodded quietly, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She moved to check on the young girl, who was still gazing out the window, her thoughts drifting between excitement and lingering anxiety. Approaching her with a polite smile, she spoke softly. "I want to apologize for the confusion earlier," she said. "You are in your rightful seat, and I assure you that nothing like this will happen again. I hope you can enjoy the rest of your flight." The girl looked up at the attendant, her eyes wide but cautious. She had experienced unfair treatment before, but the sincerity in the attendant's voice and demeanor was unmistakable. She nodded slowly, a small smile forming on her lips. "Thank you," she said quietly. Her voice carried a mix of relief and lingering uncertainty. The attendant continued, making sure the girl felt comfortable and welcome. She offered a menu for the first-class meals and explained the entertainment system, ensuring that every detail was clear. The girl listened, her excitement gradually returning, her previous discomfort fading like a shadow in the sunlight. Nearby passengers noticed the subtle shift. The atmosphere in first class had changed, the earlier tension replaced with a calm professional energy. People went about their activities, reading, chatting quietly, or enjoying the view, unaware of the drama that had unfolded moments before. The mother watched her daughter, feeling a sense of pride. Her daughter had remained composed, polite, and patient, even in the face of unfair treatment. She leaned over and whispered, "I'm proud of you. You handled this beautifully. Sometimes standing firm and staying calm is more powerful than raising your voice." The girl smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. She realized that while the situation had been unfair, she had grown stronger through it. She understood that patience, politeness, and confidence were not signs of weakness but of strength. As the flight continued, the father made a surprise call through the airline's communication system to the cabin. The young girl's mother answered quietly, and soon the father's voice came over, calm and warm yet commanding respect. "I hear everything has been resolved," he said. "I'm proud of how you handled yourself. Remember, you are strong and your voice matters. Enjoy the flight and know that we always have your back." The girl's eyes widened in surprise and delight. She had known her father was overseeing the situation, but hearing his voice affirming her and expressing pride brought an overwhelming sense of comfort and security. She hugged her mother's arm, feeling safe and valued. The senior flight attendant ensured that the first attendant continued to monitor the young girl's comfort throughout the flight, offering snacks, drinks, and assistance whenever needed. Each gesture was deliberate, respectful, and caring, a complete turnaround from the earlier incident. The crew had learned the importance of recognizing authority, understanding passengers' rights, and treating everyone with dignity. As the flight reached cruising altitude, the girl leaned back, feeling the seat cradle her gently. She closed her eyes for a moment, taking in the hum of the engines, the soft lighting, and the comfort of the space around her. The earlier confrontation felt like a distant memory, replaced by the excitement of flying for the first time, the thrill of adventure, and the warmth of knowing her father had intervened to ensure her comfort and safety. Passengers moved quietly around the cabin, enjoying their flights while the girl and her mother shared stories and laughter. They watched the clouds drift by, imagining shapes and scenes, pointing out details to each other, and feeling a connection that was strengthened by the shared experience. The incident with the flight attendant, though unpleasant, had brought them closer, teaching them resilience, patience, and the value of handling difficult situations with grace. By the time the meal service began, the young girl was fully immersed in the first-class experience. She explored the menu, carefully selecting her meal, and even tried something new, encouraged by her mother. The flight attendant served her with attention and care, each gesture reinforcing the respect and professionalism that had replaced the earlier tension. The first flight attendant, now fully aware of the gravity of her previous mistake, continued to provide excellent service, learning from the incident and ensuring that no passenger, regardless of age or background, would ever feel denied or undervalued again. The crew's professionalism and dedication were evident, creating a calm, respectful, and welcoming environment throughout the cabin. As the plane soared above the clouds, the young girl realized that while the beginning of the journey had been challenging, the resolution had taught her valuable lessons about fairness, patience, and the power of advocacy. She felt a renewed sense of confidence knowing that she had handled the situation with dignity, and that her father's intervention had ensured justice was served. Looking out of the window, the vast expanse of clouds stretched endlessly, white and golden in the sunlight. She felt a sense of freedom, excitement, and accomplishment embracing the adventure of the flight. The comfort of first class, combined with the lessons learned from the earlier confrontation, made the experience unforgettable, a story she would remember and cherish forever. Her mother smiled, watching her daughter's eyes light up with wonder and excitement. She whispered, "You did wonderfully today. You stayed calm, polite, and confident. That is what truly matters. Enjoy this moment because it is yours, and you earned it." The young girl nodded, a broad smile spreading across her face. The earlier tension and fear had melted away, replaced by joy, pride, and the thrill of flying above the clouds. The experience had transformed from a moment of unfairness to one of empowerment, learning, and unforgettable adventure. She leaned back in her seat, ready to embrace the journey ahead, confident in herself, and grateful for the support of her mother and the intervention of her father. As the plane began its descent toward New York, the young girl felt a mix of excitement and contentment. The flight had been a journey not just through the skies, but through a lesson in patience, resilience, and the importance of standing firm while remaining polite. She looked out of the window, watching the city skyline grow larger, the streets and buildings becoming more detailed as they approached the ground. The anticipation of landing mixed with the satisfaction of finally enjoying her first-class experience. Her mother sat beside her, glancing at the view with a smile. She could see the joy returning to her daughter's eyes, a brightness that had been clouded earlier by the unfair treatment she had faced. The mother reflected on the day's events, realizing how much her daughter had grown in just a few hours. She had handled frustration with grace, and the way she had stayed calm in a tense situation was remarkable. The young girl's thoughts wandered to the earlier confrontation with the flight attendant. She remembered the confusion, the denial, and the frustration she had felt when someone did not respect her rights. But now, seeing the change in the crew's behavior and experiencing their professionalism and courtesy, she understood the power of patience and standing firm with dignity. The lesson was clear. Sometimes the best way to face unfairness is with composure and confidence. Around her, the first-class cabin was calm and orderly. Passengers were preparing for landing, some chatting quietly, others reading or watching the view. The crew moved efficiently, attending to each passenger with care, a sense of professionalism and respect now deeply ingrained after the earlier incident. The young girl felt a sense of pride knowing that her experience had influenced positive change, even if in a small way, in how the crew handled passengers. As the plane lowered its altitude, the captain's voice came over the intercom, welcoming passengers to New York and reminding them to fasten their seatbelts. The girl's heart raced with excitement. She had imagined this moment for weeks, the city lights, the bustling streets, and the adventure that awaited beyond the airport. Now, with her first-class experience behind her and the earlier ordeal resolved, she felt ready to embrace everything the city had to offer. Her mother leaned over and whispered, "You did beautifully today. You stayed calm, polite, and confident even when it was hard. That is something you should always carry with you." The girl smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest. She realized that this experience had taught her more than any flight or city exploration ever could. She had learned about fairness, patience, and the importance of maintaining dignity in the face of adversity. It was a lesson she knew would stay with her for life. Meanwhile, the father, still monitoring from headquarters, felt a sense of relief knowing that the situation had been handled correctly. He knew the value of his daughter learning resilience and patience, and he was proud of how she had conducted herself. The intervention had ensured that she was treated fairly, but her ability to remain composed and polite in a difficult situation was what truly impressed him. As the plane touched down smoothly on the runway, the young girl's excitement surged. She looked out at the city below, the streets bustling with cars and people, the skyline towering above. She felt a thrill at the thought of exploring, knowing that her journey was just beginning. The flight, which had started with tension and unfairness, had transformed into a memorable adventure, full of lessons and experiences that she would never forget. The cabin crew guided passengers as they prepared to disembark. The young girl and her mother followed, collecting their belongings and feeling a renewed sense of confidence. The first flight attendant, now fully aware of her earlier mistake, approached once more. "I want to sincerely apologize for earlier," she said quietly. "Thank you for your patience. I hope you enjoyed your flight." The girl nodded politely, her smile genuine. "Thank you," she said. "I did." Her words carried both gratitude and the quiet strength she had discovered in herself. The interaction, though brief, left her feeling validated and empowered. As they walked through the airport, the girl and her mother discussed the day's events. They laughed together, sharing small stories about the flight and their excitement for the adventures awaiting them in the city. The mother emphasized the importance of handling challenges with patience and dignity, reinforcing the lessons her daughter had learned firsthand. Outside the airport, The city was alive with energy. The noise, the lights, and the movement of people created a sense of possibility and excitement. The young girl felt inspired by the day's events, understanding that even when faced with unfairness, maintaining composure and standing up for oneself could lead to resolution and respect. She felt proud of how she had handled the situation and grateful for the support of her mother and the intervention of her father. The mother held her daughter's hand as they made their way to their transportation, a quiet smile on her face. She reflected on the day's lessons, knowing that her daughter had grown in ways that could not be measured by seats or flights. The experience had strengthened their bond and provided a foundation of resilience, patience, and confidence that would serve her daughter in all areas of life. The young girl looked out at the cityscape, feeling a sense of anticipation for the experiences ahead. She realized that the day had taught her more than just a lesson about fairness in a flight. It had shown her the importance of remaining calm, polite, and confident even when others make mistakes or act unfairly. She had discovered her own strength, and that realization filled her with a quiet but powerful sense of pride. As they settled into their ride, the young girl reflected on the flight, the challenges she had faced, and the lessons she had learned. She felt empowered, knowing that she had navigated the situation with grace and dignity. The city outside promised adventure, exploration, and new experiences, and she was ready to embrace them all. The mother squeezed her daughter's hand gently. "Remember," she said softly, "what matters most is how you carry yourself. You handled today with strength, patience, and confidence. Always remember that, no matter where you go or what challenges you face." The young girl nodded, feeling the truth of her mother's words. She had learned that respect, patience, and standing firm were powerful tools, and that even in situations that seemed unfair, she had the ability to influence outcomes positively. The lesson